This is useless. Brandon Ellis didn't even look at me when he said it. My year-long product strategy filled the conference room screen behind him. 12 months of research, prototype testing, market forecasts, and late-night revisions. 8 executives sat around the table waiting for my final presentation. Brandon clicked through 3 slides. Then he opened the master project folder. "Maybe next time," he said, glancing toward me. "You'll produce something worth presenting." His cursor moved to delete. "Brandon, wait." He clicked. The folder disappeared. Before anyone could speak, he opened the recycle bin and emptied it. A few coworkers lowered their eyes. Nobody challenged him. Brandon controlled our assignments, promotions, bonuses, and performance reviews. One complaint from him could bury a career. He leaned back in his chair. "Start again." My phone began vibrating beside my notebook. Brandon gave a thin smile. "You can answer after you begin rebuilding." I looked at the blank screen where my work had been. Then I picked up the phone. "Hello." The voice on the other end introduced herself, confirmed the final terms, and asked whether I was ready to make a decision. I kept my eyes on Brandon. "Yes," I said. "I'll accept your $600,000 offer." The room went silent. Brandon's smile vanished. I ended the call and placed my phone back on the table. For months, I had watched him remove my name from presentations and describe my ideas as his own. Every time I requested a promotion, he said I needed more executive visibility, while making sure senior leadership never met with me directly. Still, I kept working. I believed results would eventually force people to recognize who had created them. That morning, I had entered the meeting expecting approval for the largest product launch in the company's history. Brandon had promised I would finally present it to the executive team myself. Instead, he stood at the front of the room, used my project as a public execution, and erased the only visible proof of what I had built. At least, that was what he believed. "Who was that?" he asked. His voice was quieter now. I closed my notebook. "A company that knows what my work is worth." Brandon stepped away from the screen. "You're not leaving this room." I stood. And for the first time, the man who controlled my career looked afraid of what I might say next. Brandon followed me into his office and slammed the door behind us. "Who called you?" I set my notebook on the edge of his desk. "You heard me." "I heard a number. I asked for a name." His voice had changed. 10 minutes earlier, he had deleted a year of my work like it was trash. Now he was standing between me and the door, watching me as if I had taken something from him. "Move," I said. "Not until you explain what's going on." I looked past him toward the glass wall. Half the department had returned to their desks, but nobody was working. They were pretending not to watch. Brandon lowered his voice. "Forget that phone call. You're finishing this project here." That stopped me. For months, he had treated me like I was replaceable. He removed my name from presentations before sending them upstairs. He presented my forecasts as his own. When I asked about the promotion he had promised, he said, "Senior leadership doesn't know you well enough." They didn't know me, because he made sure they never did. Every meeting request I sent was redirected through him. Every executive question came back with his name attached. Every editable file had to be uploaded directly to his private management folder. At first, I thought he was controlling. Then the requests became harder to ignore. "Send me the original model." "Remove your name from the draft." "Don't share this with anyone else yet." Each time, he claimed he was protecting the project. I kept telling myself the work would speak for itself. Now the work was gone, and suddenly he was desperate to keep me. "You called it useless," I said. "I was making a point." "You deleted it." "You can rebuild it." "Then why do you care whether I leave?" His jaw tightened. "This company invested in you." "No, this company invested in the project." Brandon stepped closer. You signed confidentiality agreements. You don't get to walk into a competitor's office and hand them everything you learned here. I didn't offer them company property. Then, what did they offer $600,000 for? I said nothing. That silence shook him more than any answer could have. He glanced toward the door, then back at me. Cindy, listen carefully. You will decline that offer. You will sit down, rebuild the project, and this conversation never happened. I picked up my notebook. For the first time, I saw the truth in his face. Brandon wasn't worried that I had lost the project. He was worried that I might leave before recreating it for him. An email marked Urgent Executive Review *** landed in every senior employee's inbox less than an hour later. Within minutes, whispers spread across the office. Why is HR involved? Did someone file a complaint? Is the product launch being canceled? By noon, the executive conference room was full again. This time, the chief operating officer, the HR director, and 2 vice presidents sat at the head of the table. Brandon looked completely composed. As everyone knows, he began, our product strategy isn't ready for approval. Cindy unfortunately abandoned the project after delivering incomplete work, and now she's attempting to leave the company before correcting it. Several executives turned toward me. The room waited. Instead of defending myself, I asked one calm question. Who actually built this project? Silence. The COO looked around the table. Well, nobody answered immediately. Finally, Daniel from engineering cleared his throat. Cindy designed every product requirement. A marketing director nodded. She wrote every market analysis. Our team met with Cindy every week, another manager added. Brandon usually attended the final presentation, but the technical decisions always came from her. One by one, department heads spoke. Every statement pointed in the same direction. Every meaningful decision traced back to me. Brandon folded his arms. They're confusing execution with leadership. The COO looked at him. Then restoring the project shouldn't be difficult. Brandon didn't hesitate. It can't be recovered. He sounded almost confident. The files were permanently deleted. Several executives exchanged concerned looks. A year's work, gone, one vice president asked. Unfortunately, Brandon replied, we'll have to start over. I quietly reached into my laptop bag. Nobody noticed until I placed a small encrypted portable drive in the center of the conference table. Brandon's eyes locked onto it. What is that? He asked. My backup. You weren't authorized to keep company files. I wasn't authorized to lose a year's work either. The HR director leaned forward. You have a backup of the project. I nodded. Every version. Brandon immediately interrupted. That drive should be confiscated before anyone. I ignored him and connected it to the conference room computer. The screen filled with folders. Research. Prototype testing. Financial models. Presentation revisions. Meeting notes. Version histories. Each folder carried timestamps stretching back almost 12 months. The COO slowly stood. You backed up everything. I backed up every revision, I answered, including every draft Brandon asked me to change. The room fell silent again. Only this time. Everyone was staring at Brandon. The chief operating officer leaned over the conference table. Open the version history. I entered the password. A detailed timeline appeared on the screen, showing hundreds of revisions made over the past 12 months. Every change carried a timestamp, the editor's name, and supporting notes. The COO frowned. Compare this against the server logs. The IT director connected to the company's document management system. As the reports loaded, the room became eerily quiet. Then the first discrepancy appeared. The ownership metadata was changed, the IT director said. He clicked another report. And again. Another. And again. Every few weeks, someone had edited the project records, not the content itself, but the author information attached to presentations, financial models, and executive summaries. The editor listed on every change was Brandon Ellis. No one spoke. The IT director opened another log. Here. He enlarged the screen. 3 months ago, Brandon restricted folder permissions so only he and Cindy could access the master files. The HR director looked directly at Brandon. Why? To improve security, Brandon answered quickly. The explanation sounded rehearsed. The IT director continued scrolling. Yesterday afternoon, executive access was removed. The COO's eyebrows rose. You removed executive access before today's presentation. Brandon hesitated. I didn't want unfinished material circulating. Then came the final entry. Today's date. 10:14 a.m. Delete command executed. Recycle bin permanently emptied. User, Brandon Ellis. Nobody had to ask who pressed the button. The evidence answered for itself. HR immediately separated everyone who had worked on the project. One by one, employees were interviewed in private offices. When they returned, the atmosphere had changed completely. Daniel from engineering finally admitted, "We all knew Cindy built this project." A marketing manager nodded. But Brandon signed every executive presentation. None of us wanted to challenge him. Another coworker quietly added, "People who questioned Brandon stopped getting promoted." Years of silence began collapsing in a single afternoon. Then another interruption changed everything. Phones across the conference room started vibrating almost simultaneously. Someone looked down. Congratulations. Another employee blinked. I just saw a LinkedIn announcement. The COO picked up his tablet. Across the industry's professional networks, one announcement was spreading rapidly. Cindy Bennett, appointed Vice President of Product Innovation at Horizon Dynamics. Compensation package, $600,000. Comments poured in from respected executives, former clients, and industry leaders. Outstanding choice. One of the brightest product minds in the industry. Long overdue recognition. The COO slowly lowered his tablet. They already knew your value. I nodded. They've known for months. Every eye turned back toward Brandon. For the first time all day, I understood why he had panicked after overhearing my phone call. Deleting my work had never been his real objective. He intended to erase the visible evidence, force me to rebuild the entire strategy under his control, and present the finished version as his own once again. He never expected me to walk away. A firm knock broke the silence. The conference room door opened. 2 corporate security officers stepped inside. One of them looked directly at Brandon. "Mr. Ellis," he said evenly, "we need you to come with us." No one moved. Brandon remained seated for a moment, staring at the 2 security officers as though they had entered the wrong room. "There must be some misunderstanding," he said, forcing a smile. "I'm in the middle of an executive review." The HR director closed her folder. "No, Brandon, the review is over." One of the officers stepped closer. "We'll collect your company laptop and access badge after you leave the room." Brandon looked toward the COO. "You're seriously doing this because of a backup drive?" The COO's expression never changed. "No, because of everything the backup drive proved." The IT director turned his monitor so everyone could see one last report. "The forensic review is complete." He pointed to the timeline. "The project originated under Cindy Bennett's employee account 12 months ago. Every major product model, financial forecast, prototype recommendation, and testing report was created by her. The edit history also shows repeated changes to author information made from Brandon Ellis's account. He clicked another window. Email records show Brandon repeatedly removed Cindy from executive correspondence before forwarding updates under his own name. Then another. The deletion performed this morning was intentional. It was not accidental, and no recovery attempt was made afterward. The room fell silent. The evidence was no longer a matter of opinion. It was documented. Brandon looked around the table, searching for someone to defend him. No one did. Daniel from engineering finally spoke. She deserved the credit from the beginning. A marketing manager nodded. I should have said something months ago. Another department head quietly admitted. We all knew whose work we were looking at. We were afraid of the consequences. Brandon turned toward me. You're enjoying this? I met his eyes. No. I shook my head. I enjoyed building the project. His shoulders dropped. For the first time since I'd met him, he had nothing left to control. The HR director stood. Your employment is terminated effective immediately for misconduct, falsification of work ownership, intentional destruction of company property, and violations of company ethics policies. One of the security officers extended a hand. Sir. Without another word, Brandon unclipped his security badge from his jacket and placed it on the conference table. The sound echoed through the room. He walked out between the two officers without looking back. The door closed behind him. No one spoke for several seconds. Finally, the COO turned toward me. I owe you an apology. He stood. So do we. One after another, the executives acknowledged what had happened. We should have verified who was actually leading the project. We relied too heavily on management reports. We failed to recognize your contributions. Their words couldn't erase the past. But they mattered. The COO took a slow breath. We'd like to discuss how we can keep you here. I smiled politely. I appreciate that. But that opportunity ended this morning. I wasn't speaking out of anger. I was speaking from certainty. Trust, once broken that completely, doesn't return because the truth finally comes out. By the end of the week, HR expanded its investigation into several older projects Brandon had supervised. The review uncovered additional instances where employees' contributions had been minimized or reassigned under his name. Policies were rewritten. Project ownership became fully transparent. Executive presentations required documented contributor records. The company changed because it had been forced to confront a culture that allowed silence to protect authority. Meanwhile, I walked into Horizon Dynamics on my first day as Vice President of Product Innovation. No one introduced me as someone's assistant. No one erased my name. When I presented an idea, people asked questions about the work, not about whether I deserved to be in the room. The difference was immediate. Within months, our team launched products that reached the market ahead of schedule, and for the first time in my career, I led every executive presentation myself. Ironically, several former coworkers eventually applied to join my division. When they interviewed, none of them talked about Brandon. They talked about wanting to work somewhere that recognized the people who actually created the results. Several months later, I was invited to speak at an industry leadership conference. My presentation wasn't about product strategy. It was about accountability. I told the audience that protecting your work isn't a sign of distrust. It's a sign of respecting the effort behind it. After the session ended, I noticed a few familiar faces from my former company sitting quietly near the back of the room. They applauded with everyone else. No explanations were needed. No revenge was necessary. The truth had already done everything I could have hoped it would. The day my manager deleted a year's worth of work, he believed he had erased my future. Instead, he erased the illusion that my success depended on him.